Well, the key thing that I discussed with you a year ago and that I continue to discuss with customers around the world is that when it comes to open source and standards and interoperability, we just want to reinforce the fact that we've changed as a company and we've become more open. And there's three core areas where we like to point that out. We play well with others in terms of our investments in interoperability, our support for standards, and our integration with open source. We do this because we listen to customers, including a large number of customers in Germany who have Linux, they have Microsoft, they have Oracle, they have Apple, and they just want it all to work together without lots of arguing and rhetoric clouding up the debate. And as we make the transition to the cloud, we are doing so in an open manner and in terms of standards and integration with open source within our products. In terms of things that have changed over the last 2 years, the strategy really hasn't changed. You're seeing more and more announcements from us about how we're integrating with open source. We're trying to tone down the rhetoric. And one of the things that we're happy to see is many people in the open source community are toning down the rhetoric against us as well, which I think is just helpful for everyone in the industry. We're doing more and more keynotes at Linux events. My colleague Sandy Gupta keynoted at the Open Source Business Conference in San Francisco on Monday this week and made some cool announcements there. So by changing the dialogue from one of confrontation to one of collaboration and integration, I think is something that benefits our customers a lot. It's actually kind of cool. I was here in Berlin a year ago, and I spoke at Linux Tag. I spoke at the Linux conference in Paris in the fall. And as we go to these community events, we're finding that people are actually interested in hearing what we have to say. And the fact that we are now telling our customers that we have a vision of a world where Microsoft coexists with lots of different open source products, including Linux, including products coming out of Apache. It's something that people who are very passionate about open source actually like to hear. It's totally changed. I mean, there's always going to be, some people on one end of the spectrum who just think anyone who sells software for a living is bad and that just all software should be free forever. Most people who are part of the open source community have a passion for technology. They love the community development model. They know that there's over 1 billion Windows PCs out there. And it just makes sense for them to be able to do what they do and when necessary to integrate and run on top of Microsoft. In many instances, actually build a business and do well by working with Microsoft. And for the people who are interested in integrating technology together to build solutions, where they see our change in attitude as something that they welcome. And in turn, we're being invited to speak at their conferences and to collaborate with them more. So I think for everyone who uses IT in business and in society in general, it's just a positive development. So let me share with you our perspective on cross-platform. I've been at Microsoft, I'm in my 17th year. And going back to when I started there, we invested in projects where we took Microsoft Windows and code and then platform code on top of Windows and through various mechanisms ported it to run on Unix, to run on Linux, to run on open source. And many of these projects, we were almost like goaded or encouraged or cheered on by open source people to take stuff from Microsoft and make it run open source. But most of these projects were never that wildly successful, both in terms of commercial dollars or in terms of actual adoption. So whenever people ask me, Microsoft, why don't you take IE and port it over to Linux? And I ask a Linux user, if we did that, would you actually switch and run IE? And he said, of course not, but you need to do that to demonstrate that you're open. And there's other ways we can demonstrate that we're open. And mainly, it's by increasing our support for cross-platform frameworks that people like to use to have them run in the Microsoft environment. For someone who's a Java developer or a PHP developer, it's what they use to create software. And they have a customer that's a Microsoft shop. the ability to write a Java application or a PHP application and have it run well on Windows with good integration with Active Directory and security and things like that is something that these developers want from us. So as we move forward in the cloud, for instance, we're supporting Java, we're supporting PHP, we're supporting Ruby and other open source environments on Windows Azure. So if you had gone to Scott McNeely 10 years ago and said, hey, someday Microsoft's going to have this strategic cloud-based platform where they're going to run your programs on Microsoft data centers and they're going to let you do it with open source, he would have said never. And we're doing it every day. And for us, it's not a big deal because it's what our customers want. My colleague Sandy Gupta this week announced the immediate availability of CentOS supported on the Microsoft Hyper-V hypervisor. Okay. And it joins Red Hat Linux and SUSE Linux as the next flavor of Linux that is supported in our Hyper-V environment as a guest. Mm-hmm. And we picked CentOS because we do a lot of business with hosters, and CentOS is very popular with hosters. And these customers have come to us and said, we like Hyper-V, we like Microsoft's management tools, but we want to be able to offer CentOS as a Linux service to our customers. So it's another example of Microsoft investing in integration between open source and our platform.